Thank you for joining this wonderful opportunity with Our Watch and Gippsland Women's Health. This is a great online webinar for those working with young people around how to engage them to prevent gender-based violence. Before we begin, I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. So Gippsland Women's Health acknowledges Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional owners and custodians of country, and pay our respects to elders past and present, for they hold the stories, traditions and culture. Gippsland Women's Health commit to respectful truth-telling and working in partnership to improve the health, well-being, security and safety of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. I also pay my respects to the country and elders that you are joining from today, if you are beyond the Gunai and Bunurong lands that Gippsland Women's Health work upon. So I pay my respects and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. As we are holding this session during the 16 days of activism, I would also like to acknowledge and pay respects to the women, children and gender diverse people who have died or have been impacted as a result of family and gendered violence, and those who continue to live with violence or support people living with violence. So our webinar today will focus on how we engage young people in prevention of violence against women through respectful relationships education and the line. And we look at the comfort zone activity as a bit of a case study. So today we are thrilled to have Our Watch presenting for us. And today we have joining to take us through this incredible content, Jess Strickland, the campaign strategist, Genevieve Shepherd, the principal policy advisor for respectful relationships education, Alice Drew, the senior advisor campaign research and evaluation, Brinley Duggan, social media and content advisor, and Brad Cowan, the campaign advisor. I would also like to let you all know that this session will be recorded today. The Q&A session towards the end of the webinar will not be recorded, and we invite questions in the chat. Everyone's cameras will be off and muted as our presenters take us through this content. So please let us know that your faces won't be recorded, which is lovely. I would like to now hand you over to Jess, who will take us through this great session today. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for that lovely welcome. And thank you for having us here today, and to everyone for tuning in to our presentation. And big thanks to the rest of the crew at Gippsland Women's Health for organising the session too. It's lovely to be here. So I'm Jess Strickland. I'm the campaign strategist at Our Watch, and I'm here with some of our incredible team to talk about how Our Watch works to prevent gender-based violence by supporting young people to build respectful relationships. Just acknowledging that it is December, everyone is tired. I appreciate you've made the time to come and listen today. Our team is certainly feeling it, so we just seek your permission to be inarticulate at times as we go through the presentation. And I will acknowledge the traditional owners of the land across Australia on which we are all living, working and playing, and acknowledging for Gippsland, that's the Gunai and Bunurong people. We pay respects to elders past and present, and recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and organisations continue to lead the work of sharing knowledge with non-Indigenous people and relentlessly advocate for an equitable, violence-free future in Australia. So our session today will be going through giving you a little bit of detail about Our Watch, about how we engage young people in the prevention of gender-based violence, a little bit about respectful relationship education, and we will take a look at the Line, our social marketing campaign for young people, with a walk through the comfort zone, which is a recent initiative that we delivered through the Line. As Emily mentioned, you'll hear from Jen Shepherd, Alice Drew, Bryn Duggan and Brad Cowan, and they'll introduce themselves as we go through the presentation. We represent a much bigger and broader team of Our Watch experts that all contribute to this work. So just acknowledging there's many more that sit behind us. We won't be talking about experiences of violence in this presentation, but I recognise that this is a wide-reaching issue that is distressing and devastating for whole communities. So please take care. And if this content raises any issues for you, take a note of these super useful helplines here, and feel free to just step out of the presentation for a moment if you need to. So about Our Watch. Our Watch is Australia's national leader in the primary prevention of violence against women. We work to stop violence before it starts by addressing the underlying drivers, especially gender inequality. We partner with organisations across sectors to create long-term cultural change in everyday environments. And a little note on language here. In respectful relationship education, the term gender-based violence is more commonly used rather than violence against women, as it more accurately reflects the experiences and identities of young people. You'll note that throughout the presentation, we use both terms. So on to our iceberg. Evidence shows that there are consistently higher rates of gender-based violence in places that are more gender unequal. This is because when women are valued less, violence against them is more likely to be justified. Looking at this iceberg, we can see that when disrespect towards women, gender stereotypes, sexism, gender inequality all go unchallenged, it creates a culture where acts of violence against women are more likely to be normalised and perpetrated. I just want to pause here and note that these same dynamics also affect people outside the gender binary and at intersections of racism and ableism in unique and harmful ways. So the evidence points to, there's some transitions here that we need to move through too. We've got the drivers of violence here with some examples of how these play out for young people, particularly the school environment. And our evidence points to these 4 factors as most consistently predicting the likelihood of violence against women. And really, these explain its gendered patterns. They set the foundations or conditions in which this violence occurs. And our work with schools and young people must unpack, challenge and address these. Our Watch takes a systems-based approach, starting with shifting the attitudes, structures and power imbalances that enable gender-based violence. And some of the areas we work include education, media, sport and workplaces. Our work builds on the expertise of many dedicated people who've challenged gender inequality for decades, including victim survivors who continue to speak out and demand change. To prevent violence, we need to engage people in multiple mutually enforcing ways over the course of their lives, acknowledging there's a few critical transition points across life stages which give us opportunities for change, including adolescence and young adulthood. So now I'm going to hand over to the amazing Jen Shepherd, who is going to talk to you about respectful relationship education. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here online with you all today. So my role at Our Watch is leading on our respectful relationships education work across the country. We're really fortunate in Victoria to have such a strong policy background in respectful relationships education. To date, the Victorian government has invested around $129 million in RRE across Victoria, across all areas of Victoria. And that is really unique in the Australian context. We don't have that kind of systems level approach to RRE anywhere else. Noting that, you know, every jurisdiction now and Department of State and Territory, Department of Education, school sector, independent school sector and Catholic school sector are now undertaking this work as well based on some government funding. So it's a really, really important space. It's really topical at the moment. Lots of the other states and territories are all looking to Victoria for how this approach is being embedded in Victoria. And I want to do a quick shout out to Denise, Joanna and Sylvia, who are on the line, I think at the moment, who are the inner and outer Gippsland leads and liaison officers for respectful relationships education, whose work it is to support schools to do this. So when we talk about respectful relationships education, I know it seems really basic to say we've got a definition and here it is, but it is really essential that we do have a definition for what we're trying to achieve. Nowhere else in education will we go in and look at what we're trying to do without defining what it is and what our goal is at the end. And across Australia, we have at times had different definitions of what respectful relationships education is. There's often been a tendency to think about it as just around teaching and learning. We just go in and teach young people about consent and about relationships and about gender-based violence. Yes, that is a really big part of respectful relationships education, but it is essentially only one part. we know it won't be effective if that's all we're able to do. I often talk about this work as being about the whole of school approach being a little bit like the Trivial Pursuit wheel. Like, you need all the wedges to be happening at once to sort of make it to the middle there. So yes, teaching and learning is important, but we need those other aspects. So when we talk about the definition of respectful relationships education, we're talking about that holistic approach, the primary prevention, so stopping that violence before it starts, to gender-based violence in schools. We also talk about it as being schools as being a workplace, an education institute, and a community hub. They are really essential components of RRE. What does a safe workplace look like for our colleagues? How do we bring in community and make sure that they're supported to understand the messaging, the aims, the benefits, and the goals of respectful relationships education, and then their role in the broader community and in families to do this work? Ultimately, our goal with respectful relationships education is to prevent gender-based violence through education systems. So yes, it is one piece of the puzzle, and Jess spoke just before about all the other settings where this work needs to happen. This isn't the sole responsibility of schools, but due to their reach and engagement with young people and as education institutes, it's really important that schools undertake this work in an evidence-based way. Next slide, please, Brad. Thank you. In May this year, our watch released the Respectful Relationships Education Blueprint. The blueprint provides a practical, evidence-based framework for governments on how to successfully implement, coordinate and monitor an evidence-based approach to respectful relationships education. This is kind of like the handbook for governments and departments of education and policymakers about how do we need to do this work? How do we need to set up our system to enable schools to do this work really well? This blueprint was developed in consultations with all departments of education, states and territories across the country, as well as independent Catholic school systems, to really try to highlight the work that needs to happen for us to be able to do this work. An example of that would be, for Victoria, for example, we have around 44 leads and liaison officers operating across Victoria. That work happens because it's funded from the Victorian Government, the Department of Education. That work happened, then we have a liaison that they can support schools. If we don't have that work happening at that system level, we can't expect schools to do this work on their own. So this document is thinking about how do we get ourselves set up at a systems level to enable work at a school level. And the work of Gippsland's Women's Health is really important in this piece as well. You can see that with the blueprint, the model there, it's set up into 3 phases. And that first phase there, around phase 1, is building the foundations. And that one of the key points there is identifying mechanisms for coordination and collaboration. So how do we as an education system work with other systems within our region to do this work? So Gippsland Women's Health have specialist services and expertise that they can bring along to work together. So a really big part of setting the foundations for this work is thinking about who else is in this space, how do we work together, how do we coordinate so that we can support schools in the best way possible to do this work. I would encourage you to have a look at that document if it's of useful. It's broke up into 3 components. It does talk about the evidence for respectful relationships education. It then talks about some key themes. And then the last section really talks about that granular level implementation. So it's almost like a checklist. We need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. How do we make sure we're doing that work really well? So we will include that in the notes after this meeting. Next slide, please, Brad. Thank you. One of the key pieces that came up throughout the consultation process was we really need to know what gender-based violence looks like in schools so that we can adequately address it. So we spoke with schools as well as Department of Education about what this could look like and provided a bit of a list around examples about what gender-based violence can look like in schools. And for many of you, you will see these and go, well, that's nothing new. That's been the case for 20 years. And absolutely, we've seen gender policing in schools. We've seen gender bullying and discrimination in schools. We've seen students excluded on the basis of their sexuality and gender. What's different about this is now we are now shifted towards recognising these as acts of gender-based violence, and that RRE is the mechanism that we can use to address this within a school setting. So rather than thinking about lots of these incidents as one-off behaviours or just something that someone did one day, we're thinking about how these acts are forms of gender-based violence and how we need to address the power dynamics that sit behind them and enable them to happen. So they aren't one-off incidents, they're happening because of a range of reasons, and thinking about how the drivers play out in that is really essential for how we address it. So yes, we see these things, but also how can we use RRE to address a lot of these issues within the school? Thanks, Brad. I've also pulled out some statistics as well, which are all in the blueprint. So again, encourage you to have a look at if you're looking for some information there. But we all know that the world is continuing to shift and evolve, and often policy landscape doesn't keep up with practice in schools. Schools are vibrant places and things are happening really rapidly. So we do know that we've seen an increase in tech facilitated abuse in schools, for example, the use of AI, notify apps. We've seen the rise of the manosphere, sexual harassment in schools, the impact of pornography on young people's attitudes, and also the way that they feel like that impacts their relationships and how they need to perform or act when they are in relationships. These are all things that we're seeing play out across society, not just within schools. But there are also ways of us thinking about how we can use RE as a mechanism to address some of this. Not everyone within a school needs to be an expert, but we do need to understand the environment that schools operate in and the world that young people live in, and how these things often come to schools. Lots of these issues come to schools, or we see them manifest or play out in schools. So how do we look at this work and think about, okay, we're seeing an increase in this, how do we address that as part of RRE? Not being a thing that's like, oh, we've got this other piece over here, we now need to do this piece of work or this piece of work. How do we use the mechanism and the evidence for RRE to address these issues within a school setting so that we have a really coordinated evidence-based approach to this work? I don't mean to share those statistics to be shock horror, but I'm sure all of you are aware of a lot of those statistics. I would also say that, in this space, young people are brilliant and are often, are ahead of the curve with most of us in this space, and are actively challenging a lot of these gender stereotypes within their school settings, within their friendship groups, and have a greater understanding of how those gender dynamics play out. So as a school setting, giving them a safe environment to have these conversations, to talk about this, to often, it can feel, like that we're being challenged, but it's often a way to balance and bounce off and try to unpack this work. So the work of RE is also about how we build really strong teacher-student relationships to enable this to happen, so that school is a safe place that I can come to and have these discussions and talk with my leaders, and also see it playing out. I can see gender equality across my school is really important for young people, not just in what I'm told, but how do our policies reinforce that? How does the way we operate and speak with students and other staff reinforce that? So I will hand back over to you, Jess, to talk a bit more about the line, but really encourage you to have a look at the blueprint and think about how that connects with our work with young people.
Thanks, Jen. Now we'll tell you a bit about one of our Watch's key campaigns, The Line. We've been delivering it since 2014. It's funded by the Australian Government Department of Social Services through the National Plan. So I'm handing over to Bryn. Oh, no, I'm not yet. Just keep cool, Bryn. Wait. Firstly, let me give you a bit of an overview. So the Line supports young people aged 14 to 20 with a focus on young men to have healthy and respectful relationships and approach sex and intimacy with a strong understanding of consent and recognise the limitations of gender inequality and gender stereotypes. It complements respectful relationship education delivered in schools by engaging young people in the digital spaces where they're seeking information and having conversations about these issues, and by recognising that this is a key time in their lives where they're forming their ideas about relationships and gender roles. The Line aims to equip young people with the skills and tools to have conversations and challenge attitudes and behaviours that demonstrate disrespect and inequality. Crucially, the Line offers engaging, relatable, accessible content about consent, emotions, gender roles and communication, all of which is designed with the help of young people based on what they tell us they need. Our Watch research shows that young people often feel confused and unsure about what respectful relationships look like. They get mixed messages from peers, the internet and media. These all play a significant role in influencing and reinforcing their norms and attitudes. Many young people want to do the right thing but don't have the language, confidence or role models to help them. They're looking for guidance and tools to support their conversations with peers about sex, dating and relationships. So now I think we've got a little video which will give you some insight into the campaign. And now, highly anticipated, I'll hand over to Brent, who will talk to you a bit more about the line. Thanks.
Thanks, Jess. You had me terrified for a moment there, but we're good. Yeah, so thank you. And hey, everyone, I'm Bryn. I'm, as mentioned, the Senior Social Media and Content Advisor with Our Watch, and I'm lucky to get to spend a lot of my time on the line communicating these topics to young people. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about our campaign, a bit more about our campaign and content approaches more generally. Then I'll go into Comfort Zone, which we've been over a little bit. So we operate using a hero hub help model, which basically breaks the campaign down into 3 streams. The purpose of this is really for 2 reasons. One, we're always on, which means we're constantly delivering messages to millions of young Australians every month and posting, nearly every day of the year. And secondly, to ensure we're doing a bit of everything, because we know young people are also doing a bit of everything. We need to meet them where they are. What this basically shakes out as being social media channels, which is TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook, where we are able to try new formats, messaging techniques, and really focus on engagement, but also deliver content with more depth and visibility. It's also our website, theline.org.au, where we can explore everything a little more deeply and have a place for young people to seek resources as they need them. And last but not least, Last but not least, it's those large-scale hero activities or initiatives like Comfort Zone, or you might be familiar with ones we've done in the past, Asking for a Mate, Never Follow, and a few others. This is where we grab attention, maintain our audience, bring in new audiences through short, high-impact bursts. All of this, of course, is backed by evidence and reinforced through a multidisciplinary cross-organisation project team that inputs into the campaign design and delivery. And we're constantly interrogating, monitoring, and evaluating everything we do to grow and optimize as we learn from it. One last bit to note before I move on is that we work across communities, settings, workplaces, universities, TAFE, and respectful relationship education. And these are all major considerations of our campaign strategy. Next slide, please. And on content pillars, our content lives in the spaces where our research has shown that young people are already talking, watching, and learning about relationships. So our goals are to challenge harmful messages, disrupt negative narratives, and promote positive behaviours through role modelling and guided conversations. All of that is anchored in our strengths-based messaging across 3 core content pillars. The first one being respect. This aims to explore what a healthy relationship really looks like by addressing communication, boundaries, emotions, harassment, or controlling behaviour. Second is consent. Through this pillar, we clearly define consent and discuss how to challenge pressure in intimate relationships. We explore this through the lenses of sexual consent, pressure, sexting, image-based abuse, and pornography. And thirdly, equality. Content from this pillar shows how limiting gender stereotypes are and what disrespectful behaviours look like. The themes we use to explore this are masculinity, peer relationships, sexism, gender stereotypes. Under these pillars and through our approach, our content serves different purposes and caters to all different people. Some pieces inform, clarify, and delve into the nuances, which we know young people are really after. They help young people understand concepts they hear a lot about, but are still unclear on, like boundaries or consent or you name it. Others spark conversation and engagement and insert themselves into the topics and conversations young people are interested in, think trending moments, cultural moments, and that sort of thing. These pieces challenge harmful norms and invite young people to think critically and share their views. Then we also are providing some practical tools and examples, dropping advice like language they can use, techniques to navigate tricky situations. While we're doing all this, we're moderating the conversations that happen with expert moderators engaged externally. They make sure these conversations are respectful, but they also guide young people through them. So by combining these approaches, we make sure the line feels native, relevant, relatable, and genuinely helpful in the spaces young people already trust. So I'll pass over to Brad now, who will take you through our youth participation approach.
Thanks, Brennan. Hello, everybody. My name's Brad. I work as the campaign advisor for the Line campaign. So on our youth participation, being authentic and having the voices and ideas of young people embedded in the Line is critical to keeping our campaign relevant and fresh, which is why we have a focus on youth participation in everything we do. We've also got a diverse range of perspectives involved in our campaign, and we'll keep inclusivity in mind when going through casting or recruitment for young people featured in or working behind the scenes in our content. In order to bring all these elements together, we also work with a youth-focused social enterprise called YLab, who helps facilitate some of our projects with young people. One key project that we work alongside young people with is the Youth Advisory Panel, or the YAP. This is a group of around 20 young people aged 16 to 20 from all over Australia who come together in online workshops around 4 times a year to help advise us on certain aspects of the Line campaign. In our workshops, we can talk about really broad topics like building out our understanding of the Line's primary audience segments, or understanding what some of the challenging emotions they encounter within their relationships. We can also get instant feedback on things like the Line merch design ideas, or what language and words we should be using to keep our youth focus authentic. In recent workshops, we talked through our draft creative concepts for the 2026 Hero activity, and were able to get an instant vote on the YAP's favoured idea. As well as the YAP, we've also got our Creative Hub, which is managed by Bryn, and this is a group of 8 young content creators who either write topical articles for our website and others who create content for the Line socials. Again, this is a really great way for our campaign to generate authentic content made for young people by young people. In terms of research and evaluation, again, this is a key piece of the pie to shape and inform the Line campaign, and I'll hand over to Alice, who will take us through this in a little bit more detail.
Hi everyone, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, not only because I love working on the Line, but also I'm Gippsland born and raised, so it's an absolute pleasure to be talking to my people today. Drew, for most people from the Hayfield area will know is a very common name, so shout out to Hayfield. So thank you, Brad. As Brad mentioned, we spend a lot of time and effort doing research on our audience because it's really fundamental to understand and meet young people where they are. And that's my primary job at Our Watch. So I wanted to talk a bit about some research that we did in early 2024. We surveyed 1,000 young people aged 14 to 20. We also did a lot of qualitative research as well. And we really wanted to understand what young people understand about relationships, where they feel confident and where they're unsure. And what we found was quite encouraging, but also revealing. We found that most understood what healthy relationships should look like in theory, but they struggled to apply that knowledge in practice. So there was a real gap between theory and practice. They had a strong awareness of what healthy and unhealthy behaviours are, but they felt uncertain when it came to more ambiguous situations. Boundaries were a key area of confusion for young people. This confusion meant that they were twisting healthy concepts into controlling behaviours out of genuine confusion and not, maliciously. Good communication became needing to communicate all the time. Showing you care was used to describe jealousy. Loyalty was used to describe controlling behaviours like tracking or restricting what they post. And boundaries were used to describe controlling behaviours. For example, it's a boundary for me that my girlfriend doesn't post bikini pictures online. Emotions also played a big role for young people, unsurprisingly. Anger, jealousy and rejection often led young people to avoid communication altogether. And we also saw high exposure to manosphere content, especially among young men seeking self-improvement. We also saw some harmful behaviours like non-consensual strangulation or sexist jokes weren't always recognised as that serious for young people. Building on that, we did some benchmarking research earlier this year for the comfort zone, and we took a deeper look at confidence in boundaries. Again, we surveyed 1,000 young people, 14 to 20, and we found that while many said they understood boundaries, only a third felt confident actually communicating them, and just 22% knew what to do when they felt unsure or unsafe. We also found that understanding consent was inconsistent. Many don't recognise coercion or pressure as serious, and some still believe it's up to girls to clearly say no. Young men aged 14 to 17 showed the lowest confidence in identifying healthy relationships. So essentially, the language of respect, consent and boundaries are familiar to young people, but the real life confidence to act on this is still developing, and that's where we can really support young people and what we try to do with the line. So the implications from our research, I guess, broadly and in relation to comfort zone are that it really highlights the need for practical tools to help young people build the language to express what they want and need, social permission to say no or challenge behaviours, and peer modelling to see what healthy conversations look and sound like. Specifically, we need to support young people by helping them navigate difficult situations, supporting them with the tools and language to have these discussions with partners, friends and family. Because we know that young people who do communicate tend to have much more positive attitudes across a range of things. So it's really important to equip them with those skills. We need to support them to have more than just surface level understanding of what constitutes a healthy relationship, so they can recognise the difference between healthy and unhealthy behaviours. For example, we found that being familiar with boundaries doesn't necessarily translate into confidence to communicate their own. And the more black and white a boundary, the more confident a young person felt. For example, sharing passwords was really clear cut for young people, but the more nuanced the scenario, the more uncertain and unconfident a young person would feel. For example, handling difficult emotions, showing vulnerability or potential rejection. We need to be building deeper understanding and also supporting them in how to actually apply this knowledge into their own lives. More complex scenarios require support with how to communicate, with practical, instructive education on the desired behaviours. They're really looking for the how to do this, and that illustrates what that looks like in relatable, real-life ways. We need to role model constructive conversations and give them tools to use to take into their own lives. For example, for the comfort zone, we gave them a conversation framework that just provided them with really simple language to use to express their own boundaries. That was essentially, I like this, but not that. And it was super effective in just providing them with something to take away and use. And it was really good. We'll go through in a little bit more detail later, I think. So yeah, I just want to introduce you to Comfort Zone. As a result of the research insights I mentioned, we developed it as an opportunity to engage young people around understanding boundaries, to not just tell them what boundaries are, but to unpack them and support them to enact their own. This was an advertising campaign that was live between June and the end of August this year. And now I'll pass over to Bryn.
Thanks, Alan. Just noting the question there in the chat from Kirsten. We'll get into that in the Q&A session afterwards. Yeah, I stole my first couple of lines, but yeah, comfort zone. If we can go to the next slide, please, Brad. Yep. Sorry, on before. My bad. Thank you. Comfort Zone was topic-focused campaign activity with advertising that ran across a huge breadth of channels, which you can see there. We worked with our creative agency to create a format that was playful and reflective, gave young people a way to explore their own boundaries and talk about what felt okay, what didn't, and how to deal with it when tricky situations come up. Really, the physical game was the heart of the campaign. We developed conversation prompts alongside that that provided guidance on respectful discussion and language that young people could use when having these conversations, and framed them in a way that would both spark honest conversations about boundaries and controlling behaviours, but also give them the tools to deal with whatever arose as part of them. It was all about making it easier to start talking about boundaries, not just telling them why they matter. As part of the activity, we worked in a range of physical elements to extend the campaign and make it interactive, meet young people where they are, so it was playful and engaging for them. This included a TikTok filter and then live Q&A sessions on Reddit and Twitch as well, which we worked with our media agency to ensure we to ensure we were in as many places as we could be in. Next slide, please, Brad. So to get the game out there, we created video content with a diverse cast who had strong alignment to our goals and could model having respectful conversations while using comfort zone game as a prompt. The purpose of the video content was to model relatable and engaging ways to talk about the boundaries. The videos we used in advertising across a broad mix of online channels, including TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Reddit, Twitch, Google search, and mobile gaming platforms. And we had a campaign landing page on our website as well, which enabled those who clicked through the advertising to actually play an online version of the game themselves. The talent in the videos was a strong and diverse group of role models, including actors, AFL players, and high-profile TikTok personalities. And the breadth of the talent meant we were able to model what respectful and emotionally open friendships can look like between young men, and also help normalise vulnerability and healthy boundaries in male friendships, bring authenticity and emotional depth, and have important conversations about boundaries and respect in romantic relationships, and connect with our audience and model healthy interactions between real world partners. So that the fly buzzing in front of me. To ensure we upheld our watch standards and importantly make sure the people delivering these messages are legitimate, all talent was carefully vetted, going through our extremely rigorous due diligence process and passing national police checks. For the same reason, all the content underwent thorough review through our established approval pathways. And finally, everything was tested with our youth advisory panel and expert group to make sure it landed well and hit the mark. And if Brad can play the video, this was the result. So that's one of a great deal of videos that we did come up with. Thanks. I'll pass back to Brad now.
Brad, your mic's off if you're speaking.
Are we back in audio now? All good.
Thanks.
So, one of our most successful was a Reddit AMA in terms of live formats. If you're not aware, AMA stands for Ask Me Anything, where an expert is available at a specific time, which is advertised for almost 2 weeks prior, and then Reddit users can then ask questions in advance or live during the AMA, which will then be answered by our expert. So in this case, we partnered with Mac, a youth educator from R4 Respect, to answer questions around boundaries, dating, and relationships. The results were outstanding. We had over 6 million views. We had 40 questions that we responded to and over 300 comments. People asked things like, can you ask your girlfriend not to post bikini pics? Or is it okay to not be into PDA? Or how do you have a conversation with your partner when they are constantly pushing your boundaries? Another exciting live format we got to try was hosting our own Twitch live stream. So Twitch is an online platform where young people literally just stream live video of themselves playing video games. And it was a great opportunity for us to meet our audience in an active space they frequently visit online. For our live stream, we teamed up with AU Cheesy, who's a trusted streamer with over 20,000 followers on Twitch. During the live stream, he played a game called Inzoi, which is very similar to The Sims, where he controls a character in a simulated environment. We used prompt cards during the stream from the comfort zone to generate and react to different scenarios around healthy boundaries and controlling behaviors. So the stream was featured on Twitch's homepage and promoted through AU Cheese's own social channels. It reached 12,000 viewers with nearly 40,000 minutes watched and 500 live chat interactions, particularly resonating with young men. Live formats do not come without risks though. So in this instance of Twitch, not all the scenarios played out as we planned. At one point, AU Cheesy was desperately trying to find romantic interest, which took a bit of time, and we really didn't want to portray a young man just running around desperately trying to find a date. Overall, Twitch proved to be a really powerful way to spark meaningful conversations in a space where young people feel comfortable. And now to the outcomes. Alice.
I'll skip through this pretty quickly because the sizzle reel had it, and I'll just share a link in the chat. But essentially, Comfort Zone was really successful at embedding a deeper understanding so that young people who saw the campaign reported significantly higher ability to recognise the difference and differentiate between controlling and healthy boundaries. And then their confidence increased as a result of that. And beyond that, they actually took action, which is the gold standard for how we want to assess a campaign and know that it actually did something, because as a result of seeing it, they went out, they spoke to, had conversations, they reflected, and they did lots of positive things. So I'll just post a little link in the chat that has some of those stats in there because it's a lot to take in verbally.
Cool. So in terms of how you can support the line, we would love for you to share our resources and content with the young people in your lives. Share our website at theline.org.au, where you'll be able to find links to all our social channels, which you can share with the over 16s in your life or the under 16s for the next 7 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I might just address the question from Kirsten. And Bryn, I'm going to flick to you if you're happy to respond.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's got to be impacted